When we hear the word crusade, we picture armored knights, massive war horses, and swords clashing in the desert.
We think of kings like Richard the Lionheart marching to reclaim the Holy Land.
But in the year 1212, a completely different kind of army gathered. They had no armor, they had no swords, they had no kings.
Who were they?
They were children, peasant boys, shepherds, the absolute poorest and most vulnerable people of medieval Europe. And they believed with every ounce of their being that God had chosen them, not the mighty warriors, to do the impossible.
An army of children marching to war?
Marching to what they believed was a miracle. But what awaited them was one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in Christian history.
This is the story of the Children's Crusade.
Chapter 1. The Spark of Faith. It started in France with a young shepherd boy named Stephen.
Just a regular kid tending sheep?
Exactly. But one day, Stephen stepped into the town square with a terrifyingly bold claim. He said Christ himself had appeared to him, disguised as a pilgrim, and handed him a letter for the king. He began preaching, and his message was electric. The seasoned armies had failed because their hearts were corrupt. God would grant victory only to the pure, the innocent, and the poor.
How did people react?
It sparked an absolute firestorm. Thousands of young people and destitute peasants abandoned their homes. The King of France ordered them to go back, but they refused to listen.
They were entirely consumed by the vision.
And at the exact same time, a similar fire erupted in Germany. A youth named Nicholas gathered an enormous following of thousands. His promise was even more audacious. He told them they didn't need ships. When they reached the Mediterranean Sea, the waters would part for them, just like the Red Sea parted for Moses. Chapter 2. The March of the Innocent. So, two massive, unorganized waves of believers set off on foot toward the sea.
No provisions, no supply lines, no adults leading them?
None. Just thousands of the poorest souls, driven entirely by an intoxicating, rugged faith. In Germany, Nicholas led his followers southward, straight into the unforgiving Alps.
Crossing the Alps is dangerous for trained mountaineers.
For children in rags, it was a death sentence. Without warm clothing or food, the freezing mountain passes became a graveyard. Many succumbed to starvation and exposure.
They were marching barefoot through the snow.
Yet they kept singing hymns, they kept walking. They were so utterly devoted to the mission that they endured unimaginable suffering just to reach the coast. By the time they staggered into Italy, their numbers were devastated. Chapter 3, The Broken Promise. But finally, the survivors made it. They reached the shores of the Mediterranean Sea.
This was the moment, the climax of their entire brutal journey.
They stood at the water's edge. They fell to their knees in the sand, praying, waiting for the miracle. They looked out at the waves, fully expecting the sea to tear open and reveal a dry path to Jerusalem.
And what happened?
Nothing. The waves crashed against the shore just like they always did. The sea remained unbroken.
Oh no, the devastation they must have felt.
The miracle they had staked their lives on, the promise that kept them walking through the freezing mountains, never came. Disillusionment crashed over them harder than the waves. Many broke down in tears. Some tried to make the grueling journey back home, only to die on the road. Others gave up completely and begged for work in Italian towns. Chapter 4. The Betrayal. But for those whose faith refused to break, the tragedy was about to get much darker.
How could it get worse?
Desperate to cross the sea, some groups encountered merchants offering a seemingly miraculous solution. These merchants offered them free passage on their ships. They claimed to be moved by their holy cause and wanted to help them reach Jerusalem.
That sounds like an answer to prayer.
That's exactly what the children thought. They boarded the ships, singing praises, believing God had finally provided the way. But the ships were not sailing for the Holy Land.
Where were they going?
The slave markets of North Africa.
No.
Yes, these opportunistic merchants completely betrayed them. Thousands of these vulnerable, devoted believers who had set out with visions of holy salvation were sold into brutal bondage. They were never seen or heard from again. Chapter 5. The Legacy of the Lost. To this day, the Children's Crusade remains one of the most haunting chapters of the medieval era.
It's so incredibly tragic. It feels like a story of blind fanaticism destroying the innocent.
It is a heartbreaking reminder of how vulnerable people can be swept up in dangerous fervor. But underneath the tragedy, there is also something profoundly striking:
What is it?
the absolute, unyielding devotion. These were the outcasts, the weak, the people society completely ignored. Yet they possessed a boldness that put the armored knights to shame. They were willing to walk barefoot through the snow, trusting God with absolutely everything they had.
It's a messy, painful story, but it asks a piercing question about what it means to be fully surrendered to a cause.
Exactly. True faith is powerful, but it requires wisdom, not just passion.
Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please visit our website and join our support team so we can continue telling these forgotten stories of church history.
We'll see you next time.